Hello. We had 3 games involving top 25 matchups. None of them disappointed yesterday. We'll take a look at what happened in Carrollton, Georgia, Pittsburgh, Kansas, and University City, Michigan. The Coal Bowl came down to the wire in Pennsylvania. We'll touch on that game, plus others involving top 25 teams. With 6 weeks complete, it's time to start taking a look at the Harlon Hill Trophy and the race for that trophy. We'll look at what we think are the top candidates. And next week, number 1 will host number 2 in what could be the game of the year in Division II. We'll take an early look at it. We'll also answer your questions and respond to your comments. That and more tonight on Inside D2 Football. Thank you very much for joining us. So with Matt Witwicky, Tony Nicolette, Chris Ferguson, and Justin Polizzi, and Devin Albertson, I am Brandon Meisner. Chuck Bittner has a well-deserved night off. Well, tonight we are going to start in Carrollton, Georgia, where some great Gulf South Conference competition was on display. West Florida was able to overcome 3 early turnovers to earn a win on the road, 42-28. West Florida is 4-1, and West Georgia suffers its second straight loss. But Justin, it was a good and reminiscent of a great Gulf South Conference, matchup.
Yeah, it really was. It was, when you think of the Gulf South Conference, this game lived up to the hype. It was back and forth early before West Florida was able to pull away. Pee Wee Jarrett had 3 turnovers in the first half, 2 interceptions and a fumble at the West Georgia 21. West Georgia was only able to convert one of those turnovers into points, and Jarrett really turned it around the second half. 120 yards, 2 touchdowns in the air. So really, really improved over that first half. Shamari Mason now holds that rushing record down there at West Florida with 2,016 yards. He got that late in the second half. But it was really kind of back and forth with those turnovers early from West Florida. And it was back and forth. And then second half, West Florida came out, and that's when it all changed. Linebacker Gail Lawrence stripped the ball from Harrison Frost, and the Argos recovered on the West Georgia 23 to start on that first drive, and it was all West Florida from there. On a side note, West Georgia won the time of possession battle, first downs, and led the game passing. So it was really a back and forth game, even though the score got away late in the second half for West Florida. It was back and forth. And just to go back to Brandon, that is West Georgia's second straight loss. That's the first time they've had back-to-back losses since 2012.
The thing that really reminded me of some old good Gulf South action was there are as you mentioned, a tremendous amount of athletes making plays on the field. Very athletic game, very reminiscent of the Gulf South and what we're used to used to that type of play.
It really was, just the ball was aired out. Just athletes all over the field making plays and opportunity after opportunity. It was exciting. I enjoyed watching it. And it was a game that, again, when you think about the Gulf South Conference, you think of a lot of points, right, and you think of a lot of athletes making plays, and it had both of those.
Yeah. Well, in 2014, Pete Shinnick was hired by West Florida to head its startup program. What has he done since then? Well, the Argos finished national runner-up in 2017. It was only their second season of competition. 2 years later, the team would finish the job and win the national championship. Also, it's important to note that he was also named Coach of the Year by D2Football.com twice. So Pete Shinnick is joining us now. Coach, thank you for being here with us tonight.
Well, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Great. So, we've talked about it. Congratulations on the win. I know you've been in the Gulf South since 2017, but that game very reminiscent of an old classic GSC shootout.
Well, having been in this region for 7 years prior to coming to the University of West Florida when I was at UNC Pembroke, always just watched GSC teams and had a tremendous amount of respect for them. And now, obviously, being in it, every week you never know what you're going to get. And I think West Georgia is one of the better teams around. I think we're very fortunate to have played the way we did in the second half to come out with a victory. But yeah, you guys described it very well. That first half was about as evenly matched as you could ask for, with us turning the ball over 3 times.
Coach, let me ask, some of us had a chance to go down and see your championship game. back in 19. I'm the Northern Sun columnist. I got a chance to obviously cover Mankato. And what a thrilling game that was, back at the time. Now I take a look at you guys a few years later, and, you guys normally were passing the ball 55, 57% of the time. Now you're about 43% passing, a little bit more running. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, it's really kind of evolved. Our quarterback, Austin Reed, had 2 years of eligibility left. And we probably would be on that same trajectory. I think he's top 5 passer in Division I right now at Western Kentucky. So we obviously had a good thing going. And so we've always said our number one philosophy on offense is take what the defense gives you. Take what the defense gives you. We've got a very strong-armed, athletic quarterback right now in Pee Wee Jarrett. He can air the ball out. He did that last night, and threw 2 great balls down the sideline. And he has connected, probably numerous times already. But we also have, probably 2 or 3 dynamic running backs as well. Shamari Mason, as you guys mentioned, he broke the school record, but he's averaging about, 7.5, 8 yards a carry. And then Ravion Hargrove, he's averaging, I think, over 8 yards a carry. Pee Wee is, he's getting about 7 yards a pop. And then we've got a third running back that comes in, CJ Wilson. CJ scored 6 touchdowns for us. So we're trying to be smart in how we do this and kind of keep people off guard. And, as people are kind of backing up a little bit and doing different things, the run game is really taken off for us.
You mentioned Austin Reed, and I understand you'd rather have him than not have him. But at the same time, he's competing at the highest level of college football and having a lot of success. As somebody who obviously cares about Austin, I have to believe that you feel a sense of pride in what he's able to accomplish at that level.
I love Austin, love his family. They were great. I will say this. He had 2 quarterback coaches here, Caleb Nobles, and who Caleb's now at Clemson right now, and Rudy Carlton, our offensive coordinator, quarterback coach. Those 2 guys invested a tremendous amount in Austin to really, I think, get him to the place he's at. Austin's one of the hardest working guys I've ever been around. There wasn't a game that I didn't watch that involved, that group of programs when I'd watch them either in a bowl game or late in the season going, hey, you know what? I think Austin Reed's just as good as that guy. Well, we were right. He is, and now he's playing like that. So very happy for him. Great young man. He's a UWF grad, so we're excited about that. And he's making the most of the opportunity that's been given to him.
Coach, when you guys, earlier, 6 months ago or so, our thoughts were at D2. Okay, who's going to be their next quarterback? So, we get a little bit of word about this Pee Wee fella, right? And so we went ahead and watched a little bit of his JUCO stuff at Iowa Central. Okay, it kind of looks like Byron Leftwich. Maybe I'm dating myself with that kind of reference. Bigger body. And then all of a sudden, he's kind of got more of a skill set of a Cam Newton. He's running around, knocking guys over. As you mentioned a moment ago, just throwing ropes. That ball down the sideline we just saw. Tell us a little bit about how that whole thing played out and how he's doing as your signal caller.
Yeah, we couldn't be happier to have him. It was a great competition. Really had 3 guys, I think, competing at a very high level during our fall camp. Brett Neesett, who was our guy coming out of spring after Austin left. We had Michael Rich Jr., who transferred in from Murray State, and we had Pee Wee. And Pee Wee just started to separate himself. And I think we've seen him just continue to get better, continue to grow in this offense. And really, it's a new skill set for him and some of the stuff that we're doing. And each week he just gets better and better and better, his understanding of what we're doing and how we're doing it. And then he brings an element that we have just not had. And that's, the quarterback run game. And so in calling plays for Austin Reed, the last couple of years, he was going to sling it, he was going to RPO it and pretty much, he was going to find something. Now with Pee Wee, we've got a run element that we didn't have. And he got 4 crucial, first downs for us in the run game. He had a 25-yarder late to, hold the ball against West Georgia there on the last drive. Him doing all that with his legs. And, as we saw a couple of those deep shots, deep balls that he throws, I mean, really finding our receivers that, are doing a great job catching the ball he throws.
Coach, a couple weeks ago, you had that double overtime loss to Delta State. How did you refocus the team after that one?
Well, we were so close in that game, and we really caused our own heartache, so to speak, in that. Shamari Mason had an amazing game, over 200 yards. He fumbles in overtime. We gave up a kickoff return for a touchdown. Our kicker, who iced the game against North Greenville, he missed a chip shot. We fumbled one other time in the red zone. So, I mean, we really just shot ourselves in the foot, but we're still able to be in the game. And what I just told our guys is, look, man, that's not even close to what we're capable of doing. And we just lost to an undefeated team in double overtime. So we can either sit here and, get upset and get frustrated, or go, let's build on what we're doing. And then really about midway through, I think the second half of North Greenville started to click, started to go where we're going. We came out against West Georgia, and really played extremely well. Obviously, we had the turnovers. A couple of those are close. But I think, our team just has a lot of grit, has a lot of belief in each other, and we just kept pumping into that. I think what we've been able to do and overcome 3 close games, 3 weeks in a row, it's kind of playoff football there for a little bit. So that's what you face when you get into the playoffs. We faced adversity. We've handled adversity, and we found a way to be in every game we've played.
There's been a lot of change this year heading into the season. How do you think the Gulf South Conference this year compares to years past?
Well, I think the Gulf South is tough every week. And I know, Valdosta is not winning games, but they're still probably one of the more scarier offenses in the country. I don't know that there's any backfield that has 3,000-yard rushers in it with a guy who can throw as well. So it's still one of the scarier offenses. And, they played a very close game with West Al and really got back in it, all because their offense is what it is. West Al's playing very well. Right now, they had an early season loss, but they've come back playing well. Delta is hot. I still think West Georgia is a very, very good football team. I like where we're at right now. So with that being said, that's without Valdosta in the mix. I've always felt that one of the things I respected, and really one of the exciting things about being in this league, was you were going to be challenged week in and week out. Shorter took Valdosta to the wire. They've played other people close. We've got them this weekend. Mississippi College, they're finding a rhythm. So no matter who you're playing, you're going to be challenged. And this league, I think, from top to bottom, is just as difficult as there is. And you really don't have an easy week. We know that. We're prepared for that this week. But I'm confident whoever comes out of the Gulf South Conference is going to be well prepared for the postseason.
All right, one more before you go. I know from my experience, I've been covering college football for a very long time now. As soon as a program wins a national championship, the perspective changes. And that national championship is pretty much the goal every year, the main goal. What do the Argos have to do this year to become a team that can win a national championship?
Yeah, it's a great question. And it's kind of, as we've got a handful of new guys that are playing a lot of football for us. We just talked about that in our staff meeting. Really just, we got to get better at what we're doing well, and we got to refine certain aspects of it. I think if you looked at our first 5 games, the fact that we're 4-1 and turned the ball over where we've turned it over, and the penalties that we've had on defense, I think it shows a lot of grit on our part to overcome it. We got to clean up our own mistakes and really put ourselves in a much better situation, because we've allowed some drives to continue on defense with some untimely penalties. And we've turned the ball over in the red zone more times than, you ever want to. So I think our team's shown a lot of fortitude to be able to be in the place they are. We got to refine some things, but really keep getting better and keep finding a way to, play our best football. And that's one of the things we say. We feel if we're at our best, we can play with anybody in the country.
Well, again, congratulations on your win over West Georgia. And thank you very much for being here with us tonight.
No, thanks for having me on. Appreciate you guys.
All right.
Thanks, Coach.
That's Pete Shinnick, the head coach at West Florida. So, guys, it was not the only great game yesterday. Another top 25 matchup occurred in Pittsburgh, Kansas, where Pitt State held off a furious Northwest Missouri comeback, including a failed 2-point conversion to win 24-22 and move to 6-0 on the season. Devin, you were at the game.
Yeah, it was a great game, a great atmosphere down there. A little over 10,000 people there for Pitt State Northwest. Really enjoyed the atmosphere down there for that game. And the first half, it was all Pitt State, 21-3. They threw for 263 yards in the first half, 3 touchdowns there in the air. And Northwest, and then they ran 21 plays for 88 yards in the first half. It just didn't look good there for Northwest offensively there early on. And then second half kind of came around, and it felt like Pitt State kind of went into a shell offensively a bit. Just said, hey, we're just not going to turn the ball over. Don't give them any short fields. Make them go the length of the field and put up 22 points to beat us kind of deal. Unfortunately for them, Northwest started to move the ball a little bit there on offense. Pitt State, they only completed 1 pass in the second half. It did set up a 45-yard field goal that put them up 24-16 with about 2.5 to go. But the Northwest offense, I know they're dealing with injuries right now, but there's just something a little bit off with it. And credit to Pitt State defense, they played really well, I believe, in most of this game, limiting what Northwest could do there. And this is a great touchdown to kind of end the half there for Pitt State to put up 21-3. And that was a real backbreaker because the last 2 touchdowns came in the last 2 minutes of the first half to go up 21-3. And it really felt like the Gorillas had complete control in it. Then, as you said, their last drive, 12 seconds left, Braden Wright gets in on a 1-yard touchdown run. He actually gets knocked out of the game on that hit. And backup quarterback Mike Hohensee, who had been the starter previously, he's coming back from injury as well. He came in the game, kind of rolled to his right, threw a really good ball up, and only his guy could bring it down. Cole Hembrough, tight end, had a really good game. He caught it, came down, got 1 or 2 feet in, but as he got hit by Pitt State, as he went to the ground, landed out of bounds, and it looked like the ball may have bobbled there. I have a video of it. It's really hard to tell there for it. So they ruled it as a bobble, and at that point, Northwest was out of timeout, so they could not challenge it. There's the play right there, and I'm on the other angle of it, on the other side of it. So with Northwest out of timeouts, they could not challenge it. Since it wasn't an official scoring play, they couldn't automatically review it. So Pitt State comes away with a 24-22 win. In the end, I know Northwest wanted overtime. They think they caught it, kind of deal with no bobble. In the end, Pitt State was the better team on Saturday. Just from start to finish, they looked at the better team. They were in control the whole way, kind of deal with that. So good win for Pitt State, and back to the drawing board for Northwest.
Well, Devin, one thing I want to address, Braden Wright, as the Northwest quarterback, has received a lot of criticism over the years.
Yes, he has.
The last 2 games he has played, and he is incredibly beat up, and he still went out there and gutted out 2 gutsy performances 2 weeks in a row. I have to believe that he's gained a lot of respect from people who might have been critical of him at one point.
Yeah, so I think people are still critical of the play in the field just because he's very inconsistent at times. I've been one of the bigger critiquers of his career kind of deal, but they've definitely gained respect for Braden Wright, the kid, and the person off the field, because there for the Missouri Western win last week, the kid could barely walk off the field or barely sit down for his interview after the game. And even in this game, when he got knocked out of the game, came back to the field afterwards and was consoling his teammates. And you get to tell it means a lot to the kid, and he's a really tough SOB kind of deal. So I think he's earned some respect in that regards. With it, I think the play on the field is something that people criticize separately now. I think they differentiate that better now for the last 2 weeks than previously. I know it's harder for fans to do sometimes between critiquing the player and the person kind of deal. But I think there's that caveat to it now. And I'm not sure with his injury because he was knocked out there late in the game what's all going to go with there. But if he can't go next week, I think Hohensee is finally healthy enough now. And he played a couple times. He had that 2-point conversion play, and he came in actually Northwest ran a swinging gate fake field goal, and they scored on a touchdown there to make it a 1-score game late there as well. So Hohensee, 2 plays he played well. So maybe he can be healthy enough to come back next week. And even if Braden is healthy enough to play, like he could play, maybe he needs to sit out a week anyways because he is so banged up anyway, just to get him healthy going forward so you actually have a quarterback. If something happens to Mike going forward, you're not just running Braden into the ground.
So you've seen Pittsburgh State now in person.
Mm-hmm.
The Gorillas are undefeated. Are they the best team in the MIAA?
I think they're the most consistent team in the MIAA. Their ceiling still frustrates me a little bit. I do like their quarterback, Dodson. He took a lot of big hits in the second half. Northwest started bringing Volstat on a linebacker blitz and really getting after him in the second half. with it, but he made some real big-time throws with it. And they have good receivers on the outside. They really struggle to run the ball, but most teams do versus Northwest. So I don't hold that really against them. They just make plays on the stretch. I mean, their 3 wins over, I think, the next best 3 teams in the conference, Kearney, Emporia, and Northwest, have come by a combined 10 points. So they could be anywhere from 6-0 to 3-3 right now. They just made the plays they needed to late in games to come away with wins there. So I think they're a very good team. I don't know if they're an elite team, but they're a very good team in the MIAA, and they're going to do enough, I think, to go through the rest of the schedule and maybe get off undefeated or with 1 loss.
Devin, let me ask, and I'm going to ask kind of our whole group here in just a moment, but taking a look at that 2-point conversion at the very end, what were your thoughts when you were there live with it? What was kind of the immediate, kind of buzz or feel within the stadium when that whole thing went down?
So when we first kind of went up for it and I saw him catch it, I'm like, oh, wow, Northwest actually just tied this game. And then when the official, who was right in front of me, ran in and signaled incomplete, kind of a couple of things there. The first, the despair Northwest kind of deal with, from Cole there on the ground thinking, I caught that kind of deal with it. And then the way they have it set down there at Pitt State, the end zone there, it's about 3 feet from the end line is the barricades for the fans there in the end zone. And they were very rowdy down there late in that game. So they were very excited and had a few choice things to say over there as well there with that. But they were really excited for the Pitt State win. And it was actually right in front of the band, too, for Pitt State, so in the student section. So it was a very chaotic atmosphere there whenever they realized it was an incomplete pass. I think Coach Wright from Northwest was wanting to get it reviewed, but unfortunately, there were no timeouts left. Their last timeout actually got used because they got the ball down to the 2-yard line on a big pass play that their backup quarter to Jamar Moya, the running back on the sideline, still in bounds. They were going up there to spike it, and I believe it was the center for Northwest had to go down. He was hurt, so they had to burn their last timeout with him being down on there. A couple plays later, they score, but at that point, you're out of timeouts, out of challenges, opportunities there for it, so they couldn't challenge on there. So I think that was just kind of frustration on Northwest part because he thought they caught it. It was really close to me. I thought he may have bobbled it. It's one of those where if he catches it in the middle of the end zone, the ball never hit the ground, so it's a score. But since he's out of bounds there, the little bobble means a lot more there with that.
Okay. Let me ask, and by the way, Tony, you and Ferg are both on mute, guys. Let me ask, Tony, you guys have all had a chance to kind of see the video, and there's actually a few different forms of video out there that have gone viral. And by the way, guys, I don't know if you've seen it, but now these days things go viral and you don't even get sick. But anyway, Tony, I'll let you go first. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, I watched it several times and tried to pause it and slow it and scrub it because when he goes to the ground, it's really hard to tell whether he controlled it all the way through the process or not. And the other thing that you try to do at that point is see how the players react. Yeah. And the way the Pitt State defenders reacted was very much of a, hey, he didn't control it. And in that split second before the Northwest Missouri State receiver tried to make his case, you could almost see him kind of grip the idea that he didn't have it the whole way through. That's what I saw. But gosh, coming in from that on the field there, unless the side judge came in and actually saw the ball hit the ground, which he kind of pats the ground like he thought he did. Yeah, I mean, just at face value, it's sure hard to know one way or the other. And if they called it incomplete on the field, I certainly don't see how you could see anything definitive to be able to overturn it.
Ferg, what did you take out of it?
Well, anytime you kind of have a play like that in the end zone where the defender has the ability to push somebody out of bounds, sometimes I feel like the referee kind of gives the benefit of the doubt to the receiver at that point in time. And so I just feel like that one was so iffy that darn if you do, darn if you don't, if you're the referee. I mean, that's a really tough position to put a referee in. And, I thought he caught it. But with the limited angles, I mean, it's kind of really hard to tell, and it's also hard to overturn.
Yeah. When I saw it, guys, my immediate concern was from the time the ball catcher hit the ground, he didn't immediately come up with the football, which made me think, okay, he didn't have it clean because that's when you're going to want to show your proof. And he was kind of delayed in that process. Justin, how did you see it?
So I saw a couple different things. And first time I saw this was right before we came on the air, and it looked like on the boot that the tight end to me got lost. And what I mean by that is he lost the back of the end zone and he started to drift. And I'm like, oh, he's going to step out of bounds. You could just tell by the way he was moving towards the back of the end zone. And so I'm not sure what his coaching points are right there, but it looked like he was drifting towards the back of the end zone. And then I'm like, okay, well, he goes down. First thing I looked, his feet were in, right? So he falls out of bounds. But you can't see because of the defender, is he right there?
Right.
Is the ball bobbled or not? And you watch the side judge come in, you watch the official come in from the back of the end zone. He's got the view and the angle on it right there to see whether that ball was bobbled or not. And then my thought process went to, okay, so they have replay in this. I would assume that the officials are told, hey, if it's a scoring play and there's question, call it a touchdown because we can review it and go back and see it. I don't know if there's a better angle than what we saw. And I don't know if anything would have I think if he makes a call a touchdown, I don't know that it gets overturned based on what I've seen. And if he says it's incomplete, I just don't know.
Right.
But that official was right there. So I'd like to give him the benefit of the doubt and say if he called it incomplete, he saw it hit the ground.
And he was fairly definitive.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was. There was no
And I will
discussion.
say the look that the MIAA would have had there for it wasn't the same angle I had. I had a much better angle than their cameras just in the stadiums kind of deal because I was just right place, right time kind of deal for the video there. I could have been going the opposite direction. I would have a crap view of it. So just kind of it looked really close with it. And I mean, the official made a call there. So, I mean, it's a tough loss for Northwest, but as I said earlier, Pitt State was probably the better team anyways on Saturday. So it's kind of just a tough break there for the Bearcats.
All right. Before we move on to our next game, I want to share one thing. There's an educational aspect to inside D2 football as well. I'd like to show you that this is what's called the gorilla walk. And the players walk in the you see between the rows of people. They walk all the way from their locker room or their permanent locker room to the temporary locker room under the stadium. And you'd mentioned the atmosphere and the barricades and everything, Devin. And I just wanted to show this to kind of educate people who, in fact, last week, somebody asked, like, what's the big deal about Pitt and Northwest and the MIAA? And it's awesome stuff like that. So I just wanted to show that before we move on. Go ahead, Devin.
And I walked through the tailgate there before the game kind of happened there. I got my credentials, and I went out to the tailgate because I hadn't really looked at the Pitt State tailgate before on there. And it was a really fun atmosphere there with people out there tailgate. I didn't get to see the gorilla walk because I think it was before I kind of got in there a little bit there. But that was a lot of fun to see that. And as I said earlier, the crowd was rocking there. So it was a really fun atmosphere. And I got really good chicken after the game. So shout out to Chicken Mary's. So
always. I think is he trying to troll for free food or something?
Hey, if they will cater for 2 hours up the road, I will take it.
All right. Well, there is one atmosphere that can be comparable to Pitt when it comes to tailgating and all that, and that is in Allendale, Michigan, and Grand Valley. They're going to be part of a 1 versus 2 next week, and the reason they're going to be part of a 1 versus 2 contest next week is because Ferris State found a way to win this week. The Bulldogs trailed most of the second half and were able to score on 4th and goal with 1:11 left in the game to steal a potential upset away from Saginaw Valley. Now, I know you were there, Tony. It was sounds like in some ways like the Northwest Pitt game in that the better team probably won, but certainly the other team had a really good chance to do so.
That is actually a very apt comparison, and I was thinking that as Devin was giving his synopsis of that game as well, Brandon. I mean, if you look at it from the standpoint that, Ferris State really did move the ball pretty much at will throughout the game, or at least through better parts of the game, had more than 200 total yards of offense than Saginaw Valley did. Where it started to break down a little bit was the two teams combined for over 300 yards in penalties, 203 of which alone belonged to Ferris State. So, when you're extending teams' drives that way, sometimes you're going to end up with situations that you're not really looking for. That's actually a penalty that everybody in the press box thought should have been called, where that Saginaw Valley receiver pushed off and caught the touchdown. That made it 28-20 in the third quarter. And then on top of that, Saginaw Valley won the turnover battle. They didn't turn the ball over in the game. Ferris turned it over 3 times. It's one of those things where I think the best description of this that I give you is it was getting towards the middle of the second quarter. Ferris State had a 20-7 lead. They had a goal-to-go situation at the Saginaw Valley 1. They fumble on their way in. Saginaw Valley picks it up, runs it out to roughly the 20-25 yard line, and then score on the ensuing drive. So instead of it being 27-7, and you're starting to think, okay, this is Ferris has almost got this put away already in the second quarter. Then it's 20-14, and Ferris then throws an interception on the ensuing drive, in which Saginaw Valley turns into points. So it's 21-20. And then Saginaw Valley takes the opening kick of the third quarter, goes down and makes it 28-20, and Ferris throws another interception on the drive after that. The overview I give you is even Teddy KGB is not immune to getting a little rattled, and that's really what it looked like. Was Ferris just looked rattled. They looked disheveled. They looked out of sorts when they would run just kind of their standard stuff. Hey, Ryan Brady coached at Ferris for several years. They kind of know what the deal is. They knew how to stop some of it. And so there was a stretch of time there throughout most of the third quarter and the first part of the fourth quarter where the two teams kind of just traded punts. They just both weren't letting the other one do much of anything. And then all those penalties that we talked about that Ferris had, and they extended some drives for Saginaw earlier in the game. There was a huge situation in the fourth quarter where, still down 28-20, Ferris State had a drive where they got stopped on third down twice, and unsportsmanlike conduct penalties after those third down plays against Saginaw Valley extended that drive, and it ended up turning into a field goal to make it 28-23, which obviously then made it to where the touchdown that they scored with roughly a minute to go put them ahead. So, they stood in there. They took a punch from an opponent that was really fighting hard to stay with them. But again, I think it comes back down to when you look at how freely they moved the ball. They actually had a huge punt return touchdown that got called back on a penalty. I mean, there were a lot of points that Ferris left on the field. And, they moved the ball pretty much at will throughout most of the game, with the exception of that time where they just looked a little rattled.
Matt, before we talk about a bigger concept, I want to ask a question, Tony. Were you on the field or were you in the press box?
I was in the press box for most of the game.
Okay. I was curious because at the end of the game, Ferris had a 4th and goal from the 1, drew a penalty, moved it half the distance, and they barely got in. Now, maybe they call a different play, but I didn't know if that would have had an impact or not. You would have had to have been down there to see it.
And the funny thing is if I had had a brain in my head, I probably would have tried to run down there. But I'm an old guy, man. I don't move as well as I used to, so I don't know if I'd even made it in time. It did look close, but I don't know. I mean, for as much as Ferris is usually very imaginative, what they do in those sorts of situations, and actually the 2-point play that they ran afterwards was essentially a Philly special, and Saginaw Valley did a beautiful job of taking it away. And the Ferris State receiver that was going to throw it back to the quarterback just saw what was going on and said, the heck with it, I'm pulling it down and running it in myself, which he successfully did. But Ferris had been very successful with a lot of just kind of student body push and big, heavy quarterback moving the ball through the middle. So if they had 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3, 3rd and 4, they were converting a lot of them just by straight quarterback dive, straight keep dive. And that's what they ran on the 4th down. And they were able to kind of touch the ball just over the goal line, up over the top. It looks like he probably did get in, but from the angle I was, it was really hard to tell for sure.
Tony, I have 2 different questions for you. The first one is Malik Mitchell didn't play, right?
Correct.
Okay. Do you think that this team could make a run to the national title without Malik Mitchell and some of the, dynamic stuff he can do offensively? Absolutely. Because they move the ball consistently, regardless of who's in there.
Are they as dynamic? I think there's a case to be made there. Certainly, Evan Cummins is very solid. He's been in that program. He knows what Tony Annese wants to do. He knows how to run that offense. And if you look at the limited number of times that he does throw the ball in the game, they still get a lot of passing yardage. They get a lot of big plays out of it. So they know how to hit plays in the right spots, and he makes those throws more than adequately. So can they have enough balance to be able to make a run? Absolutely. And they've got so much speed and skill out at the skill positions. And, of course, their offensive line is always going to be very good. So their ability to move the ball, I don't think, is really going to be an issue. Does Malik Mitchell add a wrinkle to it, and that they can certainly throw the ball more? I think that's true. But I think one of the other things, too, is, Carson Gulker's spent a lot of time at quarterback in this offense in Mitchell's absence. And you pretty much know they're going to run the ball when he's in there, but see if you can stop it. I mean, that's basically what they're telling you. And most teams seem to struggle with that.
Let me ask, obviously we know, and everyone, I think, nationally gets a real good glimpse of the top two teams in the GLIAC. When we take a look at some of the other teams that are in there, who do you think is still in a fight for maybe getting a third team in the playoffs?
Saginaw Valley, if you look at the rest of their schedule, their reward for playing two consecutive undefeated teams is to play another undefeated team. They play Indianapolis this Saturday. So, if they can win that game, hey, they could finish 9-2. I got to imagine they're a little beat up at this point. I mean, they've played two physical opponents in a row. So beating Indianapolis certainly isn't going to be a gimme. They do get the game at home, so that's in their favor. But I think that's your best chance for it. I mean, certainly, the case can be made that Davenport is still undefeated, so you can't overlook what they've got going on. They're 5-0. They are going to play Wayne State this coming weekend. Wayne State's really struggles stopping the pass, and that's what Davenport does best, is throw it. So it's not inconceivable. What's that?
They'll be 6-0 then.
Well, it certainly would seem to align to that. Wayne's got a super young team, and they've lost a couple of close ones the last couple of weeks. They're starting to come around. They're figuring some things out. So, hey, it's the GLIAC. You don't put anything past anyone. And then after that, Davenport plays Lincoln, which is, basically a game that doesn't count in terms of the playoff profile. Where you're really going to figure out if Davenport can hang and actually be another playoff candidate is their last three games. They've got Saginaw, Ferris, and Grand Valley all in succession. So, hey, if they can win one of those games and find a way to have a 2-loss record sitting there in the discussion at the end of the season, they certainly would have earned that spot. But to me, Saginaw Valley is your lead candidate for that, simply for the fact that, again, if they can beat an Indianapolis team, Bowie's been hanging on a little bit with some of their games. Their strength of schedule rating as a 2-loss team should be pretty solid.
Right.
All right. Guys, let's go ahead and look at some other results involving top 25 teams. Let me share that screen really quickly. Okay. All right. So we've already talked about the Northwest Pitt game, the West Georgia, West Florida game, and the Saginaw Valley Ferris State game. But there was a good game in Pennsylvania where IUP scored late to beat California 22-21, and they win the Coal Bowl.
Yeah, I got a chance to watch a fair amount of this, Brandon, at the start of my day, early kick and everything like that. I thought it was a very evenly matched football game, and there was a few turnovers early. Felt like Cal, though, from about midway on, I felt like they were controlling the action, and got themselves up 2 scores, and then they were able to kind of keep Dwayne Brown a little bit under wraps, the star receiver, from IUP. He only had, I think, 3 grabs, 50 yards, something like that. But what we're about to see here in a moment, I think, is this wild interception in the first half. Guy goes up on the elevator and gets it, and that's a heck of a grab. But in really looking, kind of towards the end of the ball game, kind of a wild turn of events where all of a sudden IUP gets up, and Cal's in the red zone. And then all of a sudden they're going to look to spike the ball. But they're all a little bit disheveled. And with 7 seconds left, they get a procedure penalty and they get a 10-second runoff. And there's your ball game.
Yep.
And
I knew it. I saw it was happening. I said, that's exactly what's going to happen. Everybody was lost. And that's exactly what it was.
And, Cal already coming in with some losses. There's a chance that this ends kind of their playoff hopes. Really unfortunate thing there for things to kind of get sloppy at the very end. So pretty wild finish. But I've noticed a lot of the games that we've been looking at, Brandon, in SR1, for example, a lot of the PA matchups have really come down to the last second, last play,
yes,
all that kind of stuff. They're really evenly matched.
Yep.
A lot of parity.
All right. Another Super Region 1 game involved Frostburg State. They downed Notre Dame 33-30.
Yeah, Graham Walker returned from injury for Frostburg State. He'd been gone the last few contests when they lost. And he was steady enough to kind of go ahead and get them past Notre Dame, who had almost 500 yards of offense, but they just had too many turnovers. And Frostburg State was able to win that contest. And, now both of those teams are a little bit at risk as well. You're looking at 2 squads, both with 2 losses. And, when you have 2 losses, you're kind of right on that line.
Another game that was interesting. The Javelinas just keep on winning, guys. 21-17 over Western New Mexico. Ferg, they trailed for a while, but pulled it out in the end.
Yeah, Western jumped on them early. It was 14-0 in the first quarter. And then Kingsville came back, scored twice in the second quarter. And the game just felt kind of just dead after that point. It took a while for any team to get back on the board. There was, Kingsville missing a field goal and, turnover on downs. And then Western takes the lead again. And you're just kind of just wondering, is this the game that Kingsville finally falls and they find a way, early in the fourth quarter to take this down? And, Western kind of reminds me a little bit of they are just maxing out trying to win this game. They threw for 53 pass attempts in this game. They're just giving everything they got. And it just wasn't enough against Kingsville, unfortunately. And Kingsville didn't have this great game. They completed less than 50% of their passes. But, good teams find a way to win, and that's what Kingsville did.
Yeah.
All right. Indianapolis, UND, 38-23, a winner over McKendree.
Toriano Clinton kind of begins and ends there. Ferg, you obviously know all about him in the fantasy stat world. I believe he's now probably second in the country in rushing yards. He went 20 times for like 270, 4 scores. He just really how he goes is how they go. And they don't throw the ball a whole lot, don't really need to when they're able to run the ball that successfully. And they got other guys who can get carries too. But McKendree's kind of an interesting team. Turner Pullen, their quarterback, goes 42 of 59 for 362, 2 scores and a pick. It's almost like don't worry about the running game at that point. But interesting, 42 completions. Their longest gain was like 34 yards. I think if you can complete 42 passes, you'd probably have a few longer ones. But UND is. I think they just kind of keep impressing guys week to week. They keep taking care of business against teams with a 500 or better record. That's going to serve them well once those regional rankings start coming out a little bit.
I would just throw out there that the really great running backs this year, they're finding ways to have like these 300-yard games, like in offense. Toriano Clinton was like the leading wide receiver as well. He had 45 receiving yards, so he had over 300 yards of offense in this game.
Why not get him the ball, right?
Yeah, find a way to get on the ball because he's that guy.
Okay,
very much.
All right, some other games of interest, guys. Lenore Rhine wins 51-30 over Limestone.
Yeah, that game this weekend was in Hickory. A lot of anticipation, a lot of excitement with that one. Both teams came into it 4-1. Mike Fury came back from the NFL to take back over at the Limestone program and really has them playing well this year. And so a lot of expectation on their part going into this one. And Lenore Ryan, really, since that week 2 loss against Ferris State, has really started to settle in offensively. Sean White is really taking command of that offense. They're starting to put up a lot of points. But Dwayne McGee, I mean, they have a stacked receiver room. Their offensive line is solid. So they're starting to get comfortable. The offense is starting to click, and their defense is really, really, really good. Held Limestone to only 30 points and pretty much didn't give Limestone a lot to celebrate on Saturday. So a really good team performance by Lenore Ryan, and kind of set themselves atop of the South Atlantic Conference with that win.
You know, the fun thing about Lenore Ryan, they're like 3 running backs that can like easily tote the rock.
They sure do, and they all have a little bit of a different skill set.
Yes,
and I'll be honest with you, Dwayne McGee. I mean, all the attention's on him after last season. On Saturday was really the first time I really got to see in person Dwayne McGee. I mean, there were times he's running the football, he puts his foot in the ground and makes a cut, and it's just running away from people. So, but they do have a stacked running back room as well. It's a good point, Ferg, and they all have a little bit of a different skill set. They can catch the ball out of the backfield. They can stretch the field left, east and west, north and south. Not afraid to put their shoulder down and run over guys. So, yeah, like I said, they're starting to click offensively, and that's pretty scary for the for the rest of the South Atlantic Conference.
Right, in the Northern Sun, Wayne State outguns Minnesota State 41-33.
Yeah, you know what, Brandon? I think some folks thought when Wayne State got upended pretty badly by Winona a week ago that maybe this was going to be the start of a slide for Wayne. Well, they were up 27-3 in the second quarter of this ball game, and they were rocking. And Mankato made a strong comeback in the second half, but still fell short. Quarterback Nick Bone for Wayne State, in my opinion, he's the best quarterback in the Northern Sun. Threw for 266 on 10 completions. And ran for another 93. So, I mean, the fact that he's able to be a dual threat for them the way he is makes them real tough to stop, because he's got plenty of weapons in the offense. And, now that's Mankato's second loss. So they're starting to kind of tinker with that 2-loss number that we just spoke of a moment ago that puts you in a little bit of uncertainty going forward.
All right, and one final game to look at. Potential playoff contender Central Washington loses 16-14 to Western Oregon. Describe what you saw, Whit.
Yeah, we're going to watch the video here in just a moment. Brandon, don't put it up just yet. Okay. But this was a late night one that got real interesting, because obviously it's being played on the West Coast. And, Western Oregon takes the lead 16-14, 9 seconds remaining, and their PAT is pending. So obviously that means Central Washington's down a deuce as they're about ready to go ahead and do the PAT. So guys, we'll see the video here two times in a row, just so you can soak in what happens here. So let's go ahead. We have the kick, gets blocked. So then from there, all of a sudden, we're going to be on the run. And from there, we're going to go ahead and have a kind of a chase to the other end. And we're going to see if we can score or not. And all of a sudden, we're getting down further, and the kicker makes the tackle.
Kickers matter.
Yeah. So needless to say, guys, I mean, the wingman there didn't exactly come through when he had a little bit of moment to throw a block. I think he was afraid, honestly, to go ahead and not – I don't think he wanted to get called for a clip because the kicker's kind of sideways and everything else.
Or a blind side, yeah.
Yeah, and, so the fact that the kicker makes the tackle on that play and basically saves the game, I'm already nominating him for Special Teams Player of the Week nationally.
Absolutely.
Fair enough.
And but I mean, I really don't care if somebody had like 6 field goals or had a bunch of 50-yarders. They didn't do that.
Yeah, 82 running 70 yards the other way to make a tackle to preserve a win. I love it.
Imagine after the game, if you're the wingman guy who threw the lookout block there, how's that conversation go with your buddy?
It was the kicker, man.
I didn't see him. I mean, how's that work? But anyway,
that's more of my uniform looks good. Afraid to make a tackle. I mean,
Yeah, that was. If you're running with that ball and you're like, oh yeah, now we're gonna tie it up, and then at the last second it's like, wait, what?
Yeah.
All right, guys. Let's go ahead and start looking forward and look forward to the Harlon Hill watch list, what we'll call our Elite Eight. There are 8 people that we've identified. I don't think this is an inclusive list, though, or exclusive list that we've identified that could be the front runners for the Harlon Hill Trophy at this point. 4 quarterbacks: Tyson Bagent, John Matoka, Patrick Shegog, and TJ Davis. A couple running backs: Jada Byers, Toriano Clinton. A wide receiver, Dwayne Brown, and then 1 defensive player, Caleb Murphy, of Ferris State. So, first of all, anybody have any comments about the guys on this? What we're going to call the Elite Eight right now?
I would like to just throw out there because I'm going to be the homer here, but Jada Byers has almost 1,100 yards rushing, but overall he's got some receiving yards and return yards too. He's got nearly 1,300 yards in total in total offense, in all-purpose yards, I should say, and he's got 15 touchdowns. So he leads all of Division II in total touchdowns as well. He's got 2 receiving. So he's having a monster season, and they continue to feed him the rock.
Ferg, let me ask you something. Last year when we were having the same type of conversation, we really didn't have a running back who pushed Tyson Bagent, in my opinion, like Jada Byers will be. What are your thoughts?
I totally agree. So like last year, we had a situation so the CIAA in general had a running back on the list, and Byers has pretty much eclipsed him in terms of production. We're just barely halfway through the season, and really you kind of need a running back to be on pace to at least get over 2,000 yards rushing to even be in this conversation. That just seems to be the trend,
right?
And you kind of have that here. I mean, Toriano Clinton's kind of right behind him because he's kind of doing the same thing, but Byers kind of leading the charge on the running back is kind of what you need to make this race really, really interesting.
Matt, I'll have to be honest. When you posted this list, I was surprised that Matoka's throwing for 297 a game.
Well, keep in mind, Brandon, what we compiled here for the quarterbacks. We compiled all the yards total because of the fact that TJ Davis specifically really it does him a disservice if we just put the passing yards.
Gotcha. Okay.
So we combined those. Now, since the numbers for receiving for running backs are pretty low, we didn't additionally put those in because, frankly, the average voter is probably not going to look at that way anyway. The average SID who's going to be voting is probably going to pull up the stat page and see who's the leading rusher and who's second. And they're not going to do nearly how many additional yards is he receiving and things like that. Whereas a lot of times they'll look at all-purpose for quarterbacks. So when we take a look at the all-purpose, as you mentioned, John Matoka he's only got about 100 yards rushing, so his passing yards are still pretty darn good.
Right.
Okay. And in terms of efficiency, I think he's higher than anybody on the list here.
I can believe
I'm not really sure. I don't think the average voter is going to look that deep, to be honest.
But that may be true, but I feel like this show and the way that we also break this stuff down may reach some voters to say maybe we need to look at the total body of work because like a TJ Davis, you just can't look at his passing, right?
Right.
The 2 running backs we have here, you can't just look at their rushing alone because they are receiving yards. They have receiving yards and touchdowns as well. They're productive in more than one phase of the game.
Well, and I just when I look at this list, what drives me absolutely nuts, and it's whether it's the Harlon Hill or whatever you're looking at, you look at this, and these are all guys that are on teams that are typically in the top 25, and we talk about quite frequently on this show, right? So they have a pretty good supporting cast around them. What about those guys that maybe are on a lesser team, on the cusp of that top 25, maybe a couple of losses? Their numbers are really good. They don't have as good of a supporting cast. is the Harlon Hill not the best player in the country, not the best player on the best team, right? Like, if you look at Turner Pullen at McKendree, he's averaging 346 a game with 20 touchdowns.
Okay.
You know what I mean? And they're 4-2 on the season. You look at Jason Whitaker at Davenport. He's only thrown for 217 and 14 touchdowns, but they're 5-0. And so when I look at this, I look at a popularity contest, not maybe the best guy in the country. You know what I mean?
I think that's the case sometimes, though. I think these are popularity contests. There's a long-running joke on the message board that says Danny Woodhead wins every Harlan Hill Award because he kind of won in 2007 when he probably should not have, because it was a name recognition contest. I think that definitely occurs, Justin.
Tyson Bajan was third right now in terms of total passing yards and fifth in touchdowns. Mm-hmm. Everyone else would still need to beat him out because the SIDs. I mean, we can't turn a blind eye to that element.
Right.
It's crap. It's absolute crap.
Well,
but we're going by the system, and we're not going to change that tonight or this year. So
and that's fine. But at some point, the change has to happen, right? Like, it just can't be a dang popularity contest anymore.
Well, you know what? I will. All right, and this is. I want to talk about one thing, but I will say this: every year, D2Football.com names an offensive and defensive player of the year, and our offensive player of the year a lot of times deviates from the Harlan Hill Award winner. Now, sometimes it's not. I have actually gotten criticism from sports information directors for not picking their Harlan Hill winner for our award winner. And I why am I supposed to let you change my mind? Why am I supposed to let you pick my team? Anyway,
well, they watch a lot of football, Brandon.
What's that?
They watch a lot of football.
They do. They do. So
can I throw a name out real quick? I want to throw a name out because I think this individual also deserves recognition as somebody who likes the lesser known schools.
Yeah.
Jaden Johansson, the quarterback from South Dakota Mines, is a really good example of somebody who is getting left out of the conversation. He has nearly 2,300 yards in total offense, including over 400 yards rushing, 20 touchdowns in total, and only 4 interceptions.
Right.
He's a leading, of course, leading passer, but he's also leading rusher for Mines and is leading a resurgence there.
Right.
Yep. I will throw another quarterback out there just because I think he's having a really good year. I think he's actually the best at playing quarterback in the MIAA. TJ Davis is probably the best player, but Brandon Gleason for Emporia State, he's known for 310 yards a game, 16 touchdowns, only 1 interception, completing 66% of his passes in a very improved Emporia State team. We'll talk about them later playing Kearney this week, but he's a kid that definitely has been overlooked sometimes nationally because Emporia's been down the last couple of years, but he's played some fantastic football this year, and a kid on a 4-2 team that might make a run down the stretch here because they got to play Kearney and Northwest still, that to keep an eye on because he's playing very good football right now as well.
Right, and he also led me to a fantasy football win this week.
I had to set you up. Keeper. I had to do it.
All right, and then for real this time, one last thing before we go. I'm going to pull this back up. Caleb Murphy at Ferris State. He's done this in 5 games. Isn't that right, Matt?
Oof. 5 games.
Yeah.
5 games. So he's got that. That's amazing stats. I don't know how he could be not a finalist at least if he continues that trend.
I mean, Brandon, he leads them in tackles by a bit of a distance, I think. And then you take a look at his sacks and tackles for loss are really high.
Exactly.
And he's playing for what's right now the best football team. And if they're not going to be the best football team in the other, they're going to be real darn close to it. So there's a lot of similarities to how the Heisman gets done in terms of it's got to be on a team that's going to have a certain amount of visibility and so forth, unless your numbers are just incredible. I mean, let's not forget Danny Kittner's numbers last year blew away every other receiver out there. I mean, they weren't even close.
Right.
And he played for a 4-7 squad. He didn't even make it to the final 8 or whatever.
Right.
So I mean, it's the unfortunate reality we're really looking at there.
Yeah, and to put a bow on Murphy for you, Whit. I mean, you're right. He does lead the team in total tackles. The other thing to keep in mind too is they're limiting opponents to roughly 3 yards per play, so they don't often get as many snaps.
Right.
And he's still dominating on those snaps in that fashion. I mean, it's
a defensive
sometimes
job.
That level of context doesn't get looked at.
Exactly. A defensive job is to get itself off the field.
Correct.
Well, and I agree. And what he's doing is nothing short of exceptional through 5 games, right? But when you look at this, to me, when I look at Caleb Murphy, I'm going to sit there and say, hey, the guy to his right is pretty darn good. The guy to his left, pretty darn good. The other 10 dudes on defense, pretty dang good. I want to see, to me, it means more. And maybe when you look at stats and you look on paper, that's one thing. But as a coach and diving into it, and I know I got a quarterback or I got that defensive end or that corner, whatever it might be, and that guy's playing his butt off. For a quarterback to throw for 346 a game, he can't control if the defense gets stops, right? He can't control the other 11 guys on defense, but he can control what he does. And so, I guess what drives me nuts is you got a guy like that is what he is doing more impressive than a guy at a Ferris State, at a Virginia Union, at a Delta State where the whole team is pretty dang good and they're winning, as opposed to that one guy who's having to carry his team. And maybe the record isn't as good as the other guys, but he has to do a lot more week in and week out.
Sure. Now, I will say this, and this is going to be the final word on this one. Justin's opinion is going to change next year when Lenore Ryan, a SAC team, has a good team, and John Ross May has about 5,000 tackles and is in the award, is in line to win or be nominated for the Harlon Hill, and he's going to go, oh, no, there's 10 other good guys around it. So anyway, all right.
Yep.
I knew that was coming back to me at some point, right?
All right.
It all comes back around.
We're gonna thank the folks, and then we're gonna come back and take a look at the pick'ems.
Who won the pick'ems, by the way?
Just wanted to take this opportunity to thank those who have supported D2 Football this year. D2 Football is free, but it isn't cheap. Your support helps offset our expenses and allows us to expand our coverage. If you like what we're doing, please consider supporting us. Visit d2football.com/support. Or if you want to do it the old-fashioned way, click contact on the website to find our mailing address. But again, thank you for supporting D2 Football. All right, now let's look at our exercise in futility.
Ooh.
So,
Not me.
It could have been worse. It could have been worse, but as you see, Devin won the week with a 4-1 record, and a lot of us are right at 500. So it is what it is. Thank goodness that I was able to get the Wayne State win with Matt, or we'd have been sitting under 500 too. So good. Thank you to the Wildcats. Now it's time to look forward to this week, and let's see. You had to do it. That was the one time you're going to be able to fly that flag.
Yeah, absolutely. The one time I'm going to win this year, so I got to take it.
So that's exactly right. Let's look ahead to this week. Let's start with the undercard. Some pretty good games just for undercard. Let's start with Wingate, 5-1. They're going to play Limestone. What should we expect in that one, Justin?
Oof. That's actually a really intriguing matchup right there. Wingate's defense is phenomenal this year. Offensively, they're struggling to find points, but defensively, they're pretty solid. Limestone, on the other hand, again, they have a pretty good offense this year. They're clicking and they can score points. So that's a little intriguing right there between those two teams in that little matchup within the game, so to speak. One game that we left off that list too is Mars Hill host Emory and Henry this year in a divisional matchup in the mountain side of the bracket within the South Atlantic Conference. Emory and Henry surprising a lot of people, and I think Mars Hill was an early favorite to win that side of the division. So that's going to be a pretty good game, I think, at Mars Hill. And so there's a lot of history there between those two schools. So that one's another intriguing game. But when you look at the whole South Atlantic Conference as a whole, guys, Lenore Ryan's the only undefeated team in the league right now at 4-0, but then there are 6 teams at 3-1 within the divisions.
Right.
So there's a little logjam up there at the top. Everybody's going to get the opportunity to play each other, so I'm sure that's going to trickle down and work itself out here in the next couple weeks. But an interesting note, I do want to clarify for a lot of our listeners. I had the opportunity to speak with Christian Stryker, one of the associate commissioners with the South Atlantic Conference. So it's signified as a conference game when they played within the conference, right? But the divisional games are what they are going to seed the teams on within the division. So your record in the Mountain Division is how you'll get seeded. Your record within the Piedmont Division is how you'll get seeded. The only time the cross divisional games will come into play is if you have one or two teams or two or three teams tiebreaker. Correct. So just wanted to clarify that, because when you look on the schedules, a lot of times it says conference games, but they're only going to get ranked on their divisional records.
Okay, in the SIAC, Benedict at 6-0, newly ranked Benedict, is going to face Albany State, 5-1. Remember, Albany State, though, is 5-0 in Division II, so that's going to be a top 25 matchup of SIAC teams.
Oh, what a fun game this is going to be. You know, Albany is really good with defense, especially rushing defense, only gives up about 136 yards on the ground. Benedict's bread and butter is the run game. So it's going to be really interesting, especially on the defensive lines versus the offensive lines, who could really make a difference in this game. One item of note, this is what I'm really curious about with Benedict. So Albany State has some really solid wins out of conference, and they consistently play out of conference games against at least the bottom tier, middle tier of the Gulf South. And those are games that HBCUs don't always win. Like Wayne State and Shaw is a really good example of that, the CIAA. But Albany finds a way to get through those games and win those handily. And those are teams that are pushing other teams. Benedict, however, has not done that. And Benedict's out-of-conference games was another SIAC team in Lane and Elizabeth City State, who only has one win and got shut out this week. So it's just really interesting just to see how much Benedict can keep up and if they can break through by having a true signature win in this game.
All right, that's an interesting concept to think. Maybe they wouldn't be 6-0 without the schedule they had. Certainly, maybe they needed it to have momentum, but at the same time, it might not prepare them for this game itself. So.
Right.
All right. Another game in the MIAA, Washburn, 4-2 versus Northwest Missouri, 4-2. Washburn won last year. Mm-hmm. Obviously, I think without a doubt, this is a playoff eliminator for one of the teams.
Yeah, absolutely. Both teams already have 2 losses. This is a lose and you're done kind of situation, and 2 teams who are playing completely different styles of football right now. Washburn scoring 36 points per game, 450 yards of offense, but allowing 24 and over 400 yards a game, just under 400 yards a game of defense there. Defense is not good there for the Ichabods this year. While Northwest, they're only allowing 16 points a game, only about 265 yards of offense, both number 1 in the conference. But the offense has been very bad the last 2 weeks, and they're dealing with injuries right now. I think it's a toss-up. It depends on which style of play gets put there. If Washburn can get Northwest in a shootout, that really favors Washburn with Letcher Jr. on the receiver there for him and Simoncic at quarterback. But I think Northwest keep this game close, low scoring, and win it, and just kind of grind out a win at home there. But it's a very interesting game because 2 teams who play completely opposite styles going at it in Maryville.
Brandon, let me ask you. You and I were chatting a little bit about Northwest earlier this week, and or a few days ago, right. And so we were kind of talking about if Northwest loses that football game, then they're sitting there with 2 losses, and with the way that it's the strongest super region in my opinion. That's right. You could have a few GAC teams who have 0 or 1 losses. You can have what we talked about with the GLIAC. Maybe Saginaw is not in a bad spot if they were to only have 2 losses because of the fact that they've got a super high strength of schedule from the way the GLIAC has been kicking people around.
Correct.
And he's currently undefeated. So, I mean, is this maybe a time where this whole silo schedule thing really comes back to bite Northwest and the MIAA in the butt?
I think there's a distinct possibility. Last week when I went on the rant about looking at the numbers, It was because people were looking at the numbers. You don't need to break it down yet. It's futile to do that now. What you do need to look at, because it'll give you a really good indicator of what's happening, is to look at the collective non-conference records for each conference in a super region, because every team in playoff contention benefits or is harmed by that. The GLIAC, what did we go through it, Matt? It was an incredible non-conference record, like 12-2 of games that counted or something like that.
Oh, yeah, it didn't look like it. I mean, if Ferris lost to Grand Valley, they could still end up on the 2 line.
Correct.
Almost like what Valdosta had a year ago, where their strength of schedule was sky high.
Right.
And it's just kind of wild.
Right. So let's walk through this. You have Ferris and Grand Valley. That's 2. All right. Let's say it plays out the way we think it is in the GAC. That's going to be Harding and Ouachita with 1 loss. Okay. So that's 4 teams. 4 teams right there. Indianapolis would be the 5th. They're likely to continue, and even if they were to lose to Saginaw Valley, they would still probably get in. It maybe earned access, or even if not, they would probably get in
as a 1 loss.
Yeah, so that's okay. So that's 5. Okay. Then you're coming down to any 2-loss MIAA team in Saginaw Valley. And if Saginaw Valley has 2 losses, their strength of schedule is going to be out of this world, because they're going to get help from their personal non-conference schedule, as well as the non-conference schedule of the GLIAC. Yep. So it's a very precarious situation, in my opinion, for any 2-loss MIAA team, who we don't even need to worry about what their numbers are. It's going to be 500, and it's going to be, at best, it's going to be some some tertiary category that might help them, like a win over a ranked opponent or some crap, criteria like that. But I think definitely focus on it the way that I just described it, and it's not an advantageous situation for any 2-loss MIAA team.
And I think not only just that 2-loss MIAA team, but also if Pitt State does go undefeated and they get ranked below a 1-loss Grand Valley or 1-loss Ferris State too, maybe the conference will eventually see if you punish silo scheduling enough, be like, hey, you need some out-of-conference schedules to boost some of these resumes. That way you get to the playoffs, you can get a better seed, you can get more teams in. Like, it makes so much sense not to do silo scheduling. They just haven't been punished for it enough yet for it to hit them where it counts.
And I don't even like to use the word punish, Devin, because that would interpret, or that would say that some humans were doing it on purpose to get the MIAA to stop this. This just might be the way the criteria plays out. And so
I mean, that's fair. I guess that's fair, but I think sometimes you need to get whipped a little bit to get kind of straightened back out and get things corrected on there. So I'm okay with using punish, because I hate the silo scheduling so much.
All that sounds good, Devin, with the exception being you got to remember there is a significant component, and it's usually half-ish of a conference that knows year in and year out they aren't the type of team that's really trying for a playoff spot.
Right.
And they're looking at it through the lens of, if I can keep the footprint tight, I can keep my travel expenses down, I can keep everything tidy to who we know, their vote counts the same as everybody else's does. And now you're trying to win votes from teams that don't view their season and don't view their program through the same lens that the ones that are trying to make sure that they get a fair or a better shot at making a bracket.
Tony, let me handle this one, Devin. Okay. Tony, that does happen. I don't think that's actually the case in the MIAA. I think it's the case in a couple, maybe the GAC, maybe the Northern Sun.
Okay.
I don't think that's necessarily the case in the MIAA, aside from 3 schools, maybe at best. In the MIAA, it is absolutely, at least historically, because nobody will schedule us, or it's difficult to schedule, and that is why they did it. And
GLIAC has lots of open dates.
What's that? The GLIAC has so many open dates, we could make the most beautiful, pre-conference schedule that ever existed. So go ahead.
I would jump in here and just say, this isn't happening to other teams in the conference, whether it be a Central Missouri, a Washburn, Emporia, Kearney, good programs. If it happens to Northwest and Pitt State, it does hold more power, I think, in the MIAA. I know all teams get 1 vote, but if it happens to the Blue Bloods in the conference and they get quote unquote screwed kind of deal, I think that's when heads kind of start to roll kind of deal, because then the other team's like, well, if it can happen to Pitt State Northwest, there's no way that us at Washburn or us at Emporia are getting the benefit of the doubt if they don't get the benefit of the doubt kind of deal with that. So I think if it happens at Northwest and Pitt State, that's what it has to happen, because Northwest has been one loss undefeated here in the past couple of years, and it hasn't hurt them at all. So why should they care about changing the system at all if it didn't hurt them? They are in the bubble, they get left out kind of deal. Same with Pitt State. That way, I think it makes things more realistic for the teams there to want to change something if the big dogs also feel slighted kind of deal in the conference.
I just want to say that in that particular super region, you got four of the 8 committee members who are going to be coming from conferences that do the silo scheduling. So I don't know if punish really is going to happen, because that will require the GAC to really look down on their own silo scheduling. I also want to just say that I think that the Great American Conference is in a really bad spot when it comes to competition, because you got the MIAA on top of them, right, in geography, and I wish I had my map behind me. Don't worry, it's gonna come back at some point. Don't worry. But they got Missouri above them, right, and then you've got the Lone Star, and you've got the Gulf South, right, and two conferences that they carved themselves out of anyway. So they're at a real, to me, this is my personal opinion, but I think they're at a real disadvantage if they got away from the silo scheduling, and thus have no incentive to do it.
Berg, you don't think they could find games with Lone Star teams and the?
I don't think. I think they could find the teams, but I just wonder whether they're going to be competitive in those games.
All right, but okay, if that's the case, then that's telling a story.
Yes.
You know then, and from what I understand from some inside sources, the GAC was willing to schedule non-conference games, and went to the silo schedule because of a reaction to the other conferences that did it. But so the GAC has at least in the past said that they would be willing to schedule them. All right, let's move on. That's the topic in which we argue and waste more time with every year. So, all right, Henderson State 4-2 at Harding.
Yeah, you know what, Brandon? This is one of the better rivalries, in obviously the GAC. So while Henderson State, had a blemish this last weekend with East Central, one that we probably didn't see coming, Henderson, I still expect them to give a real good ball game to Harding. And I think that puts Harding, potentially at risk there themselves. I think we all would take Harding in that game, which is why we don't have them on the main card. But I think it's still an interesting game to keep an eye on.
All right. Final one, Ashland at Ohio Dominican. 2 former GLIAC teams going at it in the GMAC.
Yeah, and that was actually a really neat rivalry to watch grow when they were still in the GLIAC, Brandon. I mean, they're only separated by about 80 miles, so both of those are Central Ohio teams that recruit those same grounds really hard against each other. When you look at this game, Ashland's undefeated, but the only really tough game they had was back in week 1 when they knocked off Notre Dame, and they did it convincingly. We talked about Indianapolis as a team that's been kind of just showing up handling its business. That's pretty much what Ashland is as well. Even though the teams they've been playing aren't necessarily the stiffest in terms of tests, they still haven't given up more than 17 points in a game this year. They're only allowing, I think it's a little less than 10 a game. That defense is doing the job. We talked about Austin Brenner coming back, which they missed him desperately last year. But, what their bread and butter is the ground game. So Giovanni Washington and it's Larry, his name's escaping me. I do this every week and it kills me. Sorry, Larry, I missed your last name. Larry Martin, maybe. At any rate, those two guys, 377 on the season above. They combined for 11 touchdowns. Those two guys carry the load, and they're going to face an Ohio Dominican defense that's only given up less than 100 yards a game on the ground. And so figuring out if Ashland could kind of stick to their same formula and move the ball the way they want to is going to be interesting to watch. And then, Ohio Dominican, they like to throw the ball far more than run it. And, Ashland's done pretty well against the pass, but this might be one of the stiffer tests that they've seen thus far. So Ohio Dominican comes in, with the 2 losses, but to first place Tiffin in the GMAC, and then they lost late to Indianapolis. And this might be the telltale is that even though they lost that game, Toriano Clinton for Indianapolis had 179 yards in that game. So is that a sign that maybe Ashland might be able to run the ball the way they want to? That's kind of what we'd be watching for.
Although there is only one Toriano Clinton. But in any case, let's go ahead and look at this week's games. I think we're blessed with another set of great games. One is hosting two. That is fantastic. Virginia Union at Bowie State, Wayne State at Augustana, Emporia State at Nebraska Kearney, and UIndy at Saginaw Valley. We're going to take these in reverse order that you see on the screen.
Okay.
Because we want to talk about and pick Grand Valley Ferris last. Let's go ahead and start with UIndy Saginaw. And I'm going to start first again. And I will pick Saginaw Valley to rebound and win against UIndy. Chuck will send in his picks. Devin.
I think Saginaw's quarterback got banged up a little bit last week. He should be good to go based on what I've kind of heard. I think Saginaw Valley does win this one at home, get back on the winning track.
Okay. Justin.
I'm going to take Saginaw Valley at home. I thought they did some really good things this past week against Ferris State, and I look for them to continue.
Ferg.
At this point, any team I choose is like the kiss of death. I might as well continue to trend, and I'm going to take UIndy in, I guess, an upset here.
Okay.
Yes.
And then Whit.
Berg, you're killing me. I was liking the way everyone was clearing out, giving me UIndy all for myself, and then Berg does that. I'm going to keep riding UIndy. I really like the way they're playing, and I think Saginaw Valley for a third straight week having a really tough contest. I think it's going to wear on them a little bit. I like UIndy here.
Okay. Next game, Emporia versus Kearney. Justin, we're going to start with you.
This is a tough one. I think I'm going to take Kearney at home.
Okay. Ferg.
I'm going to stay on the Emporia train.
Okay. Whit.
You guys, I picked Kearney to win the MIAA long ago, and I'm going to stay with them here. I think they're playing some really good defense.
Okay. I will pick the Lopers as well. Devin Albertson, you go last.
So I really wanted to pull the trigger on Emporia State. I love Gleason. I love what they're doing there offensively here. They were a couple of bad kicks away from beating UCO and Pitt State, be undefeated at this point on there. But when you're playing Kearney, you have to do those things correctly because they're going to play a close game against them. And Kearney, we talk about TJ Davis a lot and how good that offense can be. But the defense this year is much better. Right now, they're third in the conference in total defense and points allowed, just behind Northwest and Pitt State. And I believe in both of those. So I'm going to take Kearney at home here. If this was in Emporia, I might take Emporia State, but just give me the Lopers and TJ Davis.
All right. Wayne State College at Augustana. Justin, you're going to start us out.
Augie at home.
Okay. Chris.
Wayne State.
Okay. I'm going to pick Wayne State as well. They helped me out last week. Devin.
I won't learn from last week, and I'll take Augie.
Okay. And then Whit, you're going last.
This is a really tough one for me. I had Augie winning the league in my preview. I had Wayne State winning 5 games for the whole season. And now they're at 5 after 6 weeks. So it shows what I know.
Way to nail it.
Yep. I'm
What an
right
idiot.
That said, Augie is tinkering between second and third quarterbacks. Their third quarterback finished out the back half of their last game. They have some uncertainty there offensively, and Wayne State's been playing very good football. I'm taking Wayne State.
Okay.
Is it too late to change my pick? I'm just kidding.
No. Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
All right. Let's go ahead. Virginia Union at Bowie State. And Whit, go ahead and pick first on this one so Chris can pick last.
Before I do, Ferg, let me ask you a question here. Which way do you think the computer rankings, Massey, are going on this one?
I think they're going – you know what? I think they're going towards Bowie State.
Agreed.
They got Bowie by 3. I found that interesting. So that all said, I love what Virginia Union has done and the way they go about their business. I think Bowie, though, is starting to get their mojo a little bit here. And I think we were kind of pushed them to the side, almost like we were going to count them out a bit. Fill out top 25, everything else. I'm taking Bowie to win this game. I think there's a pride game for him here.
Awesome. All right. I will pick Virginia Union. Devin.
I will also take Virginia Union in this one.
Okay. Justin.
So I'm with you, Whit. I think Bowie State's starting to find their mojo a little bit. New coaching staff trying to feel them out, and they're starting to find their stride. And Bowie State is a tough place to play. However, Virginia Union, I think they're hot this year. I really like what they're doing. They went on the road and won in Valdosta, which is never easy to do. I'm going to take Virginia Union in this one.
Okay. Chris, you get the last choice.
Well, in this particular game, the last time that Virginia Union beat Bowie State was 2016. And, both teams are they're very physical teams. Virginia Union has really bulked up on the offensive and defensive lines. And we know what Bowie is, right? Very tough, can get to the quarterback, that kind of thing. I have to agree with the way that you guys are looking at this from the Bowie State front because, DJ Golat's one of the top or most productive quarterbacks in Division II now. And last week, like yesterday, they delivered a knockout punch at Virginia State that I was not seeing coming. I mean, it was brutal. And I put my head down and left at halftime. It was so bad. And I picked Virginia State to win that game. They sent a message. It was like 31-7 at halftime. So to me, I think that Bowie State, if you want to beat the champs, you got to beat the champs. I don't think Virginia Union is going to win this game. I know I'm going to hear it from Coach Parker probably, but that's okay. I'm going to choose Bowie State to defend the crown and to take this game.
All right. And finally, the game that might be the game of the year.
Yep.
Grand Valley at Ferris State. Devin, you're going to go first.
I didn't want to go first. Let's see here. I will take – as much as I want to take Grand Valley, I think there's still a block there of some sort that you can't just quantify with numbers. And Ferris State's a team that they're going to lose the turnover battle by 3-0. They're going to have 200 yards in penalties, and they'll still find a way to win because they're just that talented. It's ridiculous how they do it. But give me Ferris State at home here in a slight win over Grand Valley.
Okay. Justin.
I'm excited about this game.
Absolutely.
I think it's going to be everything we think it's going to be and then some. So I think Ferris State, I got to see them play earlier this year. I think the game against Saginaw, while it showed some different things and it showed some vulnerabilities, I've been high on Grand Valley all year. I'm going to stay on the Grand Valley train. I think they're going to pull the upset on the road. That no one's gonna take them on the road. I like them.
Right, Chris.
I'm going to go.
Chris, okay. Go ahead.
I'm going to go with you, and I'm going to choose Grand Valley as well on the road. I think that they got revenge on their mind after last year, and this is probably the game that they have circled on the calendar. So yeah, I like Grand Valley.
Right, Whit.
I'm not totally sold on the Ferris offense at the moment. I know Malik's coming back, but there's going to be a little bit of a getting used to with that as well during gameplay. I just think Grand Valley is primed, and I think their defense is going to be good enough in this ball game. I like the fact that they've got multiple guys who make plays offensively too. I mean, realistically, this is a coin flip game. You guys realize that too. This time and this moment, Ferris has won their title. I think it's Grand Valley's turn here.
Okay. And I am going to pick the Lake Show as well. Wow. Only one pick for Ferris in that.
Right. And it was me of all people.
That's okay. All right. Now,
they're going to send a private jet for you to watch the game.
Because he's going to have to do some heavy lifting now. I did not make Tony pick any of the other games. But Tony, this game is so in your wheelhouse. Tell us about what to expect out of Grand Valley and Ferris State.
I mean, guys, it's everything that you think it's going to be, right? These are huge rivals. They play for a trophy. They've been rivals pretty much since the GLIAC had its inception back in the early 70s. A lot of that's geography based. Before Davenport joined the league, those two were always the closest to each other. And so this rivalry is not just a football rivalry. I've been to volleyball matches between these two schools where it's just brutal. Basketball, men's and women's, soccer. I mean, it is a rivalry that runs through and through. For a couple of years there, they actually had games at Van Andel Arena in Grand Rapids, and it was like an NCAA tournament type of atmosphere with the pep bands there and everything. I mean, it was wild. I mean, so this is a big rivalry. It's huge. Look, both teams are scoring more than 40 points a game. They're both allowing less than 12. They're both putting up between 440 and 490 yards a game on offense. They're both giving up, in the low 200s. I mean, they kind of mirror each other in a lot of ways. They both want to run the ball first. They both have quarterbacks that are going to be able to do things fleet of foot. They both play multiple quarterbacks. I mean, we've seen at least 2 or 3 quarterbacks from Ferris in every game so far this year, and we've seen that in almost every game for Grand Valley as well. So, I mean, these two teams, they really, really love to play each other because the rivalry's so good that it might be the truest test for each one each year. And so they both want this game so badly. And so I'm at a loss as to really who has the advantage here, with the exception being, okay, until somebody takes it from Ferris, it's theirs. They are at home, and they have the Malik Mitchell kind of ace up their sleeve. Does he play? Does he not? Grand Valley's got to figure out how to be prepared for him, whether he's there or he isn't. If he's there, is that a detriment? Like Witt says, it's a possibility. But there's little question that because his skill set is so different than the quarterbacks they use currently, does that make things a little more dynamic? Does it make it that different? I mean, I don't know. I mean, I saw an Evan Covens to Malik Mitchell 79-yard touchdown pass against Saginaw Valley the other day. It would make you think, how much more dynamic do they need to be? So, hey, this is going to be one heck of a game. I'm looking forward to it. It's part of what college football is all about. And thank goodness that we actually get to see, because when you think about it in Division II, we don't see a number 1 versus number 2 happen very often. I'm trying to think of the last time maybe it even has.
2004 is the last one I know of.
What's that?
2004 is the last one I know of.
Yeah. So, I mean, how fantastic is it that we're lucky enough to have it?
Mm-hmm. Question for everybody kind of deal. Just if you guys have a vote in the media poll and you guys took Grand Valley over Ferris, did you guys have Ferris number 1 in your media poll? Just kind of curious with the thought between having Ferris at 1 and Grand Valley picking the win, or what's kind of going on. Just kind of curious. There was comments in the chat. I wanted to kind of address that while we were still talking about the game.
Brandon can check mine right now. I got Grand Valley 1.
Okay.
You are not the only person that has Grand Valley at 1. So anyway, all right. Well,
there's a lot of votes, so that's
yeah.
I mean,
the only issue I have with this game is that it is a 1 o'clock kickoff, and I think they should move it back to like 8 p.m. Eastern.
Put it on prime
all
time.
the other games get done with, and everybody can go and buy a Flow subscription just to watch that game, because I think it will be worth it. So,
you mean all 10 of us that watch other games, right?
That is true. Well,
so did Tony give us a pick, or did we?
No. He's going to save that for his column, probably.
Well, okay, that's fair.
I think he's leaning my way.
Can't give it all away.
So he gets to save for the column, but I don't. I don't like that. What's that about?
Tony's better than you.
Ferg, you see what happened there?
Brandon
I'm with you. I'm with you.
Brandon
100%
makes me
away.
show up in the standings every week. I'm going to take every out I can get.
When you have Augustana 1 versus Sioux Falls 2, you can save it for the column that week. Okay.
Wow.
Oh, well, I can forget it then.
Yeah.
Ferg, you're getting
NCAA problems.
All right.
Ferg, you're getting a little tough on us.
All right. Let's go ahead.
I know it.
This is just your weekly reminder to like and subscribe. One thing I forget to do is say you can share this, and we really appreciate it. We have, in the history of D2Football.com, we have not spent 1 cent on any kind of advertising or promotion. You guys truly are our marketing department. And if you love what we do, I'm sure somebody else would too. And we would appreciate it if you would share what we do with other people. You can follow us on social media. All of our accounts are in the description of this video. Again, check out our columnists. Lots of them are here. Quickly, Matt Witwicky does a great show that's as good as any show you'll hear on radio as part of his column. And
Let's
even
not
if
get carried away.
What I'm sorry, what?
Let's not get carried away.
Yeah, no, it's as good as any show you'll hear on radio. I might be biased because I like the content, but nonetheless, it's a great show. And again, you can check us out for scores every time that there is a game. Before we go to the questions, I want to thank Flow Sports, KOAM, WZZM, the PSAC Network, SWX, and Morgan Givens. I've never done this before, but he was the photographer who took the picture of David Durden. That was our thumbnail, and we've used it a lot. And it's a wonderful picture. So I thought I'd give him a little shout out.
Yeah, totally.
All right. Now let's go ahead and look at some. Let's start with Ferg. Winston-Salem State has fallen off hard. They may legitimately end up being winless this season. Your response, Ferg.
Wow. The sorrow drowning continues.
That's a big pull right there.
That's exactly what you need for this season. Let me picture this for you. Okay, so Winston State is going up against an opponent this past week, yesterday, right? First of all, they canceled homecoming because of the hurricane, which it ended up being a sunny day because they ended up not playing Lincoln. Losing to Lincoln, oh my gosh, the sky's falling.
Yikes.
Then they play another team in Livingstone who they have not lost to since 1998. Okay. Now, the first 4 drives to Winston-Salem State in the first quarter were all turnovers. And so in total, they had 6 turnovers. They fumbled the ball like they were driving. They got to the one. They fumbled the ball. And they took the lead in this game in the fourth quarter. And then Livingstone, the worst team in rushing in Division II, okay, finds a way to get down and score as the game is ending. Okay, my world is ending right now. Okay, because it is so bad. It is just so bad, and that's not even the worst streak. Okay, Johnson C. Smith is coming. If you're listening to this broadcast and you're a Winston State fan, Johnson C. Smith is coming. Has not beaten Winston State since 1996, and their offense, which is a really good offense, is coming for us. Okay, so the likelihood of Winston, I don't know. I need to go see what Massey says at this point because even Massey might be slightly weighted towards Winston State.
Hold on, I'm on it for.
But I need to know what I need to know what is the likelihood of St. Augustine's winning against Winston State, because that is literally the only barrier between Winston State winning and losing a game this season.
Winston-Salem State should win that outcome you mentioned, 31-20, according to Massey.
And that's what I'm saying. Like, St. Aug is like the worst in Division II in scoring defense, but things are just so bad there. They hired a coach that really just he's only had one winning season, and he's got like 7 or 8 seasons. And they hired this coach, and they hired him, nice guy and everything, but alumni are just furious. It's just bad. Okay, it's just bad. Okay, I need my wine now.
All right, well, Chris,
I need my wine.
Chris, get drunk on us after the show. All right, great.
For a guy actually on Massey, I clicked over and told Massey that their conference affiliation was the MIAA, and it had him winning out.
Oh, that's a good one.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. So, hey, fellas, if Ouachita and Pitt State both wins out, who gets the number 2 seed in SR3? The answer is the Ferris Grand Valley loser.
Flip a coin for the 3 seed at this point. It'll be those weird numbers at the end where one conference has 6 teams above 500, the other conference has 5. So the MIAA team gets the 3, whatever it is. It's going to be some tertiary number at the end there.
A ridiculously
or they
stupid
could
criteria.
take a look to it. Hey, who did you beat on the road that had the winning record versus not? That type of thing.
Some criteria, it's like 8 things down the line kind of deal. It's going to differentiate the two teams. So flip a coin.
You know, I would prefer people bribing each other in back rooms to that kind of criteria.
Well, lately, guys, when that's happened, they have looked at as simple as they can because everything else is going to be even, right? Even because of the silo scheduling. They look at, okay, who in the top 10 in the region have you? How many of those have you played or beaten? And sometimes it's okay. One's beaten 3, one's beaten 2. Okay, we know which one to give it to. I'll throw out an awkward scenario there. Is what happens if Pitt wins out, Ouachita wins out. Okay, let's say Grand Valley beats Ferris this weekend. You're going to have Grand Valley on the 1 line. Okay, no matter what. Ferris will be on the 2 line because of strength of schedule. If Indy beats Saginaw, Indy will be on the 3 line. Book it. Okay,
could see it.
It's good. Yeah, Devin, you see where this is going?
Undefeated GAC or MIAA team on the road in the first round.
That's what I'm talking about. Ouachita somehow gets the 4 undefeated. Then your undefeated MIAA champion is the 5th seed, and they're on the road.
And it's Pitt State.
That would be sudden change in the conference.
All right.
Kind of rooting for it at this point.
A not so serious one, but I did notice this. Tony's shirt.
Wow. That was a poor color choice on my part.
No, it's all good. I just thought it was funny that he said that because I had noticed it too earlier. So, all right, let's go ahead. Because Joe asks this question like every year, and I'm with him, but I wonder if the committee will eventually punish the Silo Conference team. I think they may have at times with lower seedings, but not sure if they've done it to really impact the seeding. I don't think they've ever really punished with lower seedings. I just think that the Silo schedule creates such a ridiculous scenario that it's impossible to figure out how to do it, how to assign it in any way that reflects reality. That's my opinion.
Yeah,
you're right.
And Brandon, we've been talking quite a bit about the MIAA in this regard because I think that we all feel that the top 3 teams, for example, in the MIAA would probably be pretty favorable to a lot of other conferences' top 3. And that said, they are not giving themselves a chance to show that they are better by winning out-of-conference games and improving their lot come playoffs.
Yep.
That's really the crux of all of it.
Yep,
exactly.
absolutely.
And they're the first one that kind of went to the silo scheduling, so we blame them because they kind of started this with the Northern Sun and GAC being forced to because they couldn't find games kind of deal, and then the GLIAC not being able to find games. So it's all – they started it, so they get the most of the brunt of the conversation, which is fair.
All right. Eric says, wait, the MIAA has reviews? Whiskey, Tango, Foxtrot. Yes, we talked about this last week when obviously you were not paying attention, or maybe it was the week before, Eric. But nonetheless, you were not here. The MIAA got approval to use a review system, and it's a review system that allows the official on the field to make the call based upon the view from two different cameras, like an end zone camera and the camera at the top. It's not perfect, but it is certainly a lot better than not having it. So the MIAA, because it's inexpensive, but I think it's likely to spread. It's not going to cost what it costs Division I teams to have the replay. So, All right. Joe, I didn't even rip you last week for chatting about regional rankings so early. It's okay to talk about them when you talk about them in terms of bigger pictures and who conference or how conferences have done, but not in terms of, well, Team X hasn't played anybody yet, but Team Y is, so that's why they would be first. It just doesn't matter at this point, right, in my opinion. Okay. This won't happen, but it sounds fun. So Inkblot would like the MIAA and the GAC to move to 4, and the Northern Sun and the GMAC to 3. That would be pretty interesting. What's everybody's thoughts on that in terms of competitive balance?
I was going to address it from geography because I love it.
Yeah, once again, not a good time for you not to have the map for. We need the geography.
Can we get it back next week? Is that possible?
Yes.
Let's just get him a green screen and we'll put up a map graphic.
Right.
Okay.
That's awfully similar to what it was before this last change, isn't it?
Yeah, it's always
pretty
similar.
close.
I mean, yeah, it's just nonsense. So, but it's nonsense because the system makes it nonsense and the geography makes it nonsense. But it's D2. But it's too bad that maybe a couple of playoff caliber teams will not make it from Super Region 3. I think that happens quite a bit.
Yep.
Every year.
They're
used to it.
Yeah. I think that happens more than you think. So, Chris, this would be one for you to handle. Is the running back from Virginia Union the best you've seen since Isaac Redmond?
Redmond was really good, and I think he probably had like the highest ceiling overall, like career-wise.
Mm-hmm.
He went to the NFL, played for the Steelers, did exceptionally well before he got hurt with an injury that put him out of the NFL. But from a Division II standpoint, I think you also have to consider Trenton Cannon in 2017, Virginia State, and also Tobias Taylor.
Right.
And Nick Cooper from Winston State. 2 of the 3 guys got some NFL shots. Cannon's still in the league as a returner.
Right.
They all had really, really, really good productive seasons and were feared by all. So, Redmond's in that conversation, but I think those are the other three backs that come to mind that were just exceptionally good from the CIAA since him.
All right. Let's go ahead and look at the next question. I think it's really
he's no Danny Woodhead.
It's a comment, but I think Kyle or Cleishreen is saying what we had talked about earlier. Like, Ferris, Grand Valley, Washita, Harding, Indy, Pitt State, 0-1 losses, only leaving one spot between Nebraska, Kearney, Northwest Missouri, Washburn, Saginaw.
I would throw in Emporia over Washburn because they beat him head-to-head and beat him handily there.
Okay.
But, yes.
But nonetheless, yes. Okay. And let me look because I want to end with a funny one. All right. The last comment of the day was this one. Sorry, I don't know why I was arguing. I apologize. I just say random stuff sometimes. We know how that feels. We will send you an application for membership or for being on Inside D2 Football because we do the exact same. So, all right, guys, that is going to do it for us tonight. Thank you all for being here. And did you want to do that one shout out?
Yeah, so shout out to Matthew Judon, Grand Valley State, and then Lenore Rhines, Kyle Duggar. They combined. Judon had a sack strip today for the Patriots. Duggar picked it up and scored it. So a big play there. A couple of D2 guys combining for a big scoop and score touchdown in the NFL as the Lions got rolled by the Patriots. Also, I think Sam Roberts from Northwest is on that D-line for the Patriots too. So the Patriots have quite a few D2 guys playing there for them this year. So a couple of D2 guys playing, making big impacts next level. Love seeing that.
All right, guys, that is going to do it. Thank you, everybody, for watching. We'll be back here next Sunday at the same time.